Hi, welcome to Finding the Word. I am Melanie Brown, and I hope you had a wonderful holiday weekend. Thanksgiving was great, and maybe you even got some shopping in, some deals, and just had a really relaxing, restful weekend. And I'm back at it. It's December the 1st. It felt like it was just a perfect new start. I had a few days that I have words. The words have been coming still. The words do not stop. So praise the Lord for that. But just having an opportunity to stop and do the words didn't work for me these last few days. So I've learned, as you know, we've talked about this, that I don't carry on anymore. I used to get so upset. I mean, it would just ruin my whole day. But now I've learned to go with the flow, bring the word when I can get to the word. And I intend on going through a streak here with December, starting here with the 1st and getting these words out 1, 2 a day, whatever I can do. And the first one's kicking off with the word tell. And I'm excited about this word. It jumped in front of a few other words, came kind of out of the blue, but was such a nice message that I got in my heart that I'm excited to share. And this is coming from telling about the things that God is doing in our lives and the things that he has done. And it's coming out of a passage and things that I was looking at where references were made to who God is. And so scripture references the miracles, the promises that God has made for Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. In Genesis 12, 1 through 3, he promises to make descendants of Jacob a great nation, to bless him, to make his name great to the point that all the people on earth will be blessed through him. It was a miraculous sign. And then also Isaac, he repeats and reaffirms the covenant with Isaac in Genesis 26, 3 through 5. He promises to be with him, to bless him, to multiply his seed as the stars of the heavens. And the miracle there, it says, is his blessing on Isaac's crops. It was a barren land. And so he received 100-fold in the same year. That was a miracle there. And Jacob, in Genesis 28, 13 through 14, he promised Jacob land, innumerable descendants, to bless all the families on the earth through him. And so that connected to the promise of Jacob's dream where he saw the ladder to heaven and God's continued presence and protection throughout his life. So he's referenced as the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob through various places and the covenants made. Now, there's also references being made to the miracles, to the wonders that God has performed. Psalms 105:27 was one of the first ones. And in Psalms 105:27, he states that they performed his signs among them, his wonders in the land of Ham. And he also is even referring way back where in Psalms 105:2, sing to him, sing praises to him, tell of all his wonderful acts, glory in his holy name. Let the hearts of those who seek the Lord rejoice. Remember the wonders he has done, 105:5, his miracles. And in Exodus 10 verse 2, let's start with 1. Then the Lord said to Moses, go to Pharaoh, for I have hardened his heart and the hearts of his officials, so that I may perform these signs of mine among them, that you may tell your children and grandchildren how I dealt harshly with the Egyptians and how I performed my signs among them, and that you may know that I am the Lord. And that is another place where they were told to let them know, tell your children, tell your grandchildren of the signs and the wonderful wonders, how I dealt with them, how I am the Lord. A couple of additional scriptures that let us know that we need to be sharing the things that God has done with generations are Psalm 78:4. We will not hide them from their children, but will declare to the next generation the praises of the Lord and his might and the wonders he has performed. Also Psalms 145 verse 4. One generation will commend your works to another and will declare your mighty acts. So here's a couple of additional places that are giving the command to pass down the miracles and the stories and the wonders that God has performed for us. So what I was seeing here and what hit, and I was excited about it, honestly, and I'm excited to pass this on, is that God has continued to do so. In our lives, we all have stories. We all have situations where he has performed signs and miracles. He has shown that he is the Lord our God. He is the Lord. And so we can look at things in our lives, but what we know is that this was passed down. We have references in the New Testament about it. We see places where he is letting it be known what he did, and it got told to each generation, to the children and the grandchildren and on. And because of that, they're able to know God's goodness. They're able to take in his faithfulness. They're able to trust and have growth in their faith. So I was thinking about all of us. And the things that God has done, not just the miracles he's performed in times past. This isn't old things that are gone. Sometimes we'll think like, well, of course, it seemed crazy how they didn't do things and how they were always like afraid, how they're always whining about something and feeling like God wasn't going to come through when he right there was performing these miracles. But we do the same thing. We've talked about it. We do the same thing, like he's not performing miracles for us as well. Some of the miracles that were performed that they were able to reference was Jonah and what happened with Jonah and the fish. And in 3 days, he controlled the storm. In 3 days, he was able to be swallowed up and then released in the 3 days from the fish. He parted the Red Sea for the Israelites to escape the Egyptian army. That's Exodus 14, verses 21 through 31. The walls of Jericho fell. That's Joshua 6, verses 6 through 20. If you're wanting to read any of these stories, where the walls fell down after the Israelites marched around the city. Daniel in the lion's den, where he shut those lions' mouth. If you want to read that story, it's Daniel 6, verses 16 through 23. So there are so many references, and they were being told of these things. So they were able to say, God has done all of these miraculous things, and he has been so, good to us. And they passed these stories on to their children. So it was able for them, they were able to then have the faith in the Lord for the things going on. So I was realizing, guys, we have to do so. We have to record for our families stories. Yes, we're reading about other people's stories, things where people have angels that showed up, protection. We watch programming on it, and it's wonderful. But what about our personal stories for our family? What about our generations, our grandchildren and our children? What are they reading about for generations to come on what God has done? And so I feel like it's something in my heart. It's going to take some time, but there's many miracles, just like I'm sure that you share. Marlon walking through a stroke in his life, having to have brain surgery not once but twice, and the miracle of being brought here to Jacksonville, to the very place where the best surgeon in the country, in the world arguably, was located to perform his surgery not once but twice. That was a miracle that shows the faithfulness of God in our family. There's a story going back to my father that I would try to tell briefly. But this is a testimony that I know has helped me in terms of where you live and in housing and the provision of God by him just expressing this story and telling this story. So I know this is something that is helpful for us for all generations when we have things that God has done. There was a time when they were moving, my parents. I was not home at this time. I was away at boarding school. But they found the perfect house. They loved it. They looked a little bit early because, when you're looking early, you don't know how long it's going to take you to locate a place. So sometimes you get started a little bit early to make sure that you're good in those couple months. Well, it just so happened they found this house right away. And they were like, okay, we still have a few months left, but this is perfect. They visited the house, everything. Well, she was looking to deal with getting this house rented out fast. And they would have had to rent the house months prior to their lease actually being up. And it was a decent amount back then. I mean, you're talking probably 30 years ago. Well, more than 30 years ago, because I believe I probably was 16 or 17. So we're talking about a good 35 years or so ago. So he was like, okay, $600 a month or whatever it was is a lot for us to be paying monthly at this time for months, plus the current rent that we have. And even though this house was perfect to my sister and perfect to my mom, and they wanted it so bad. And he said, I just don't think I can do this, guys. And so it was a hard decision. And my father expresses this in the sense that, his heart was heavy because he always loved to give what he could or make it happen. If everybody wanted it, I'm going to try to make it happen. But he just knew this was something that was just not going to work because he had to provide both mortgages, both rents. So time goes on. And they had to let it go. Somebody else moved in the place. They were like, oh, we missed the very house that we wanted. And maybe we'll find another one. Maybe we won't, week after week after week. And they're looking at the paper. And back then, you got a newspaper. Okay. And you would, open it up and look at the ads for who was renting out their home. So they get this newspaper and they're looking week after week. Nothing. So it gets down towards the end. And, my father was feeling like, oh boy, they wanted me to get this house so that we had the opportunity to have a house. If we don't end up with anything, it's going to fall back on. See, we should have got it. He should have did it. And he wasn't sure what he was going to do. And they had to be out. The very final week comes and he opens up that paper and they're reading. And, he swears that this house that's being described sounds exactly like the house from months prior, but is thinking it can't be that house. That house was rented out. Well, do you know, it turns out that the people that moved into the house got a job offer suddenly that meant they had to move out of town. And they were offering payment. Literally, they received payment to move into the very house that they were going to move in months prior. So the way the Lord worked it out is he found people to hold the house for a few months, and not only hold the house for a few months, but then pay them to move into the house that they were going to move into anyway. And so this story passed down. It passed to me, I passed it down to my children. I've talked to my daughter-in-law and son about it. Anytime anyone has some type of question or concern or thought about, we really need a place, or as we went through different things and we moved here and we were having trouble finding a place, there was a calm. There was an ability to say, you know what? God has shown himself so faithful in this area. If he did it for them, I know full well he'll do it for me. And when it comes to the provision for a place to stay, no concerns, no worries. And that is due to being able to testify, the testimony of God's goodness. And so that's an example of just one. When we moved across country, and I was pregnant with the fourth, we had lost everything. And God showed his provision there multiple times. There was a story of getting a car, such a good story, for $200. And I didn't think that was possible. A good running blessing that came from someone's obedience of, I was told to give you this car for $200 when I didn't think that was possible. And that's all we were given and all we had to work with. He has shown his hand. The stories also of me being woken up completely out of a dead sleep to keep my child from being stuck in a car that was getting hot, from passing away in a hot car. I was woken up by God. He has been faithful in so many ways. And this is something that needs to be written, passed to the family, able to read. So I'm coming with a message with the word, tell of his goodness. The word is tell. Tell of the things that God has done. Psalms 105 verse 2, to sing to him to praise and tell of all his wonderful acts. And so I am putting it out there. We're going to begin working on a book for our family. We're going to work on publishing something that we can share. Even if it's written out, we're going to put it together. photos if we can of time frames, stories written that can be referenced, that can be copied, that can be passed down. So we can also tell generations what God has done, that his promises are true, and that we can tell of his goodness and his faithfulness. And it will help to carry us through other generations of different things that are happening, different things that go on, that we're able to see the Lord's hand, just like the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that was passed down to those descendants. We want to pass down the God of the Mitchells and the Browns and the Burdens and those stories that we have in our family that lets us know how God has been faithful. Don't forget to find the word, and don't forget to tell of the goodness for your descendants of what God has done in your family. I will see you tomorrow.